Hey everyone, Hoff here. Before we get started, we just want to send out a big thank you to our partner, Grind Coffee Co., for their support of the show. They're a convenient subscription service offering specialty grade, single source, 100% Arabica coffee, available in whole bean and drip grind. Check out grindcoffeeco.com. Thanks again to Grind Coffee Co. for supporting the show.
Hey, this is David Johnson with Boom Nation. I'm happy to be here with the team today for the Builder Sessions. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Builder Sessions, a podcast where we chat with your favorite builders.
We get to know them, their stories, and hopefully inspire you to get off the couch and build something cool. I'm Hoff.
And I'm Rosie.
And on this episode, we chat with David Johnson from Boom Nation. We talked about the history and evolution of the company, the global need for qualified skilled tradespeople, and he gave some great advice for tradespeople looking for employment.
All this and a lot more on this episode of the Builder Sessions. David, welcome to the Builder Sessions.
Hey, thanks for having me. So glad to be with you guys today.
All the way down from Texas.
Yeah, we were just comparing weather forecasts today, and I believe I ended up on the much better side of this coin than you guys.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the case probably forever. So
I will be calling and crying whenever summer rolls around, though. We're dealing with triple-digit heat and major humidity, so
yeah, that's fair.
You guys keep me in mind whenever July and August gets here.
Yeah. Like we hit triple digits it's so crazy. We hit super cold and then we'll hit, 100, 101 in the summertime. It's such a big swing. It's so crazy. Anyways.
And before Christmas, we had minus 50 Celsius for about a week. And then a week later, we were plus 16. So we had a 66 degree weather change in over 2 weeks, so it's a lot to get used to.
That's like a desert experience when you don't know what to prepare for.
It's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make sure you have your parka, your boots, your shorts, every weather type.
All of it.
Like it hit for freedom units minus 50. That's minus 58 Fahrenheit, and then it swung like Hoff said. It just swung all the way. Like it's. People like there are, the birds don't know what the hell's going on. Everyone's like, we got flowers popping up in people's yards, and then they bust off because they're frozen. It doesn't make sense. Whatever. So, David, once again, thanks for coming on the show. For those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with yourself or Boom Nation, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks. So, I'm with Boom Nation. Best way to describe us is we are kind of like a LinkedIn for blue collar, and we're a little bit like Barstool Sports for blue collar. So we are a community. We're the biggest blue collar community in the U.S. of badass skilled tradesmen, and that represents community members from all walks of the blue collar life. A lot of iron workers, welders, pipe fitters, boiler makers, electricians, HVAC. Equipment operators, mechanics, drivers, anything that you can think of, but really kind of the hard hat and steel toe boot crowd tends to be the largest portion of our audience. And we engage with one another with the things that resonates from job sites, from life experiences, and just the different things that come up whenever you've been around people that work with their hands for a living. So with that, our company has kind of built a following online, all the different social platforms that you can find out there. And we put out a lot of funny, engaging material. But then we also help with recruiting services for that community because we try to do everything through the lens of the worker. And we know that there are so many companies out there looking to connect with good men and women to add to their team. We always hear this common conversation about, where are all the workers at? There's not enough people today. No one wants to work anymore. You can always experience that. There's probably some element of truth to that. That's why there are still, numbers of unemployed people around. But on the other side of that, we know there are tons and tons of people that are looking for their next job. And so we like to play that role of helping to connect good people with good opportunities. And so, recruiting is a big part of that. We do some other project communication tools, applications that we have as well. But that's who Boom Nation is just building up that community and trying to find a spot, within the trades, a lot to do with the construction industry. I myself, I spent the majority of my career working in the refining and petrochem world. So I live on the Gulf Coast, Southeast Texas. Everything around here is refining and petrochem. I mean, we have North America's largest refinery in Motiva here in the Beaumont area, plants from ExxonMobil, Shell, Lyondell Basell, all Chevron, Phillips, the companies you can think of that are the largest corporations around in the energy sector, all have locations stretched along the Gulf Coast from South Texas over to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, through that area. So that's where I came into the energy sector. That's where I've had the most exposure with working with skilled tradesmen. Whenever I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to be in the FFA program. We called it being an ag. It was all the agriculture classes. And that group was so important in my development at that stage of my life. I did well academically, but there were so many other programs within the FFA that allowed me to pick up other skills. There were leadership contests, things you went through for learning chapter conducting, public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
There was even a contest called Ag Radio, which you would kind of go on and do a kind of a radio news bit about a topic of the day. And then
That's awesome.
I'm sure that they're probably doing podcasting with that now. But there was also the kids that did metal shop, they did some different things with animal husbandry and, things like that. I never was quite the metal shop kind of guy. I was never quite that good, at those skills, but there was a place for me where I fit. And I was actually an ag major at university. Came out of school and just knew I was going to be involved with ag business. And lo and behold, my first job was back into the refining and petrochem world, and I was off on my way. So it's kind of a funny thing where you never really know what the path is going to look like for you when you start. I had no idea I would be where I'm at today with Boom Nation. I was really an anti-social media guy up until 2020 rolled around. I didn't even have a Facebook page. I had LinkedIn, and that was about it.
Yeah.
But then I wanted to connect with friends, and during that time, we were all, at home and away from one another. It gave me an opportunity to connect with people again, and now it's part of my everyday life with work and trying to make connections for other people. So that's a little bit about how I got involved, but it's just one of those things that you never really know what that next step is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, in my opinion, kind of a testament to it doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're working hard and putting your best effort into it, opportunity is going to find you.
And also enjoying it too. It sounds like, you wanted to go into that agricultural field, you get a passion in high school. And sometimes that's just the first step in taking off and almost broadening your horizons in a sense.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you that I didn't know my interest would be in those areas at that time. I lived in a very rural area. So everybody lived spread out from one another. So we didn't live on working farms or anything. There were some farms around, but that was not my family. But it was very much a blue collar lifestyle. But I will tell you what ended up making the largest difference to me were the two instructors that I had in those classes. And so I tell you, Mr. Carlton and Mr. Curry, one of them is still teaching today. He did his first year of student teaching whenever my dad was in high school,
Wow.
a senior in 75. And I had him all through, my 4 years of high school, and he's still there today. So, he has to love what he's doing, or he would have left a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's, Mr. Carlton, which, man, I remember that I look up to those guys so much. I started dressing like them. I was wearing the starched jeans and the plaid button-down shirts, and boots, the thing, because to me, they were such an example of what hard work and determination and just a self-realized individual look like. Is a good example to me of what a man should be at the time. And so much that I even went to the school that they both graduated from for university, and they helped me to get on with that program and get started. So it's one of those things. I know you guys are both teachers, and you make those impressions on new students coming through all the time. Hopefully you have those students come back and share with you the impact that you've had on their life, because I know to this day that it's been one of the things that I will remember till the day I die is, the impression that those gentlemen made on me early on.
and it's so humbling because we've both had that happen already, and we're what, like 6 years into our careers, 6, 7 years, and it's so humbling, and you're just like, well, I was just doing my job, and to think of how influential anyone's life can be just by being yourself. Like everyone holds this like such power of influence over, not over people, but like everyone's influential, and and I tell these kids all the time, you guys are so influential, you gotta use these powers for good, not evil, right? But it's like,
Yeah,
man,
everyone wants to be a social media influencer,
yeah.
but they have no idea what influence they want to lead. They want the attention more than anything, but you can put
Exactly.
whatever title on it that you want to.
The likes, right?
I just
Anyways,
actually had some grade 12s from last year stop in the shop earlier this week to come say hi and check in. And even just that, sometimes when we go through, especially with being in the welding and fab and, the wood shop, those hands-on trades courses and classes, we have a bit of I'd say maybe we have more time with students to be able to build relationships than say a math, science, right? Because they have so much curriculum and it's a lot of it's book work and stuff, and they still are able to create really good relationships. But being hands-on and having a little bit more time, it really sometimes you don't think you're building relationships, and then these students come back, whether it's 1, 5, 6, 7 years, and I'm off to university now, or I'm drilling with my uncle out in the oil field, or I'm a red sealed carpenter, and it just makes you feel good because whether or not you think you had a relationship with them, you did, and some of that little thing like, oh, look at all this new machinery, or oh, you still got this thing, and I was on that, and I turned a bowl on the lathe, and you're still doing that. Like it's a really cool experience to see, and for me, that's a big point to be able to, whether it's 1, 2 times a year or every couple years, to have them come back. It's just, we were impressionable with them and made a difference, and maybe went a little bit out of our way to make them feel comfortable or get them into the trades. And it's almost like a full revolving circle.
That's sweet.
Yep. You know what? One of the things that I think is so good about having vocational classes still available for high school students is you have an opportunity to build those relationships with a few students that are not going to choose to build those relationships with another educator.
Yep.
The dynamic is just not there. The common interest is not there. And that doesn't mean that no one builds relationships with those other teachers, because you're going to have the students that, just really hit it off with their English teacher or their history teacher or whoever that is. And thank goodness for them, because they have great examples of people to connect with. I have 2 sons that are 13 and 11. They are very different, but I know from both of them that they tend to do better whenever they're active and they're moving around. They're doing something with their hands. And I really think it has to do a little bit at that age with just the difference in boys and girls. That doesn't mean girls don't enjoy those things, but my boys do not sit still very long, very well, right? Yeah, they're going to be squirming and all those things. We fight with it at church all the time. So, a little head slap, to the back of the pew and everything. So, but with that, you're going to have those kids whenever they're 14, 15 years old. They need someone to talk to. They need someone to build that relationship with. And if they have vocational classes, they have an avenue to make that connection with someone outside of the family, someone that is a friend to them. That's not quite the same dynamic that they have with an uncle or, dad's friend or, someone else in the family. And it just exposes them to a little bit more of the world than what they've seen anywhere else in the school. So I'm a big fan of those vocational programs.
And sometimes we get students, to, like you were saying, that they might be, maybe not their behavior in English, social science stuff that you're sitting down, their behavior is off the charts.
I know where you're going with this.
Rosie and I worked together for a year, and we had a couple students that we were both able to teach. And for lack of a better term, you want to not wing nuts, but, just very much, they couldn't sit in a chair, lipping off teachers, but then in our classes, they were doing good. I mean, we still had to put the boots to them, not literally, but we had to kind of navigate, I guess, their behavior and giving them a little bit of maybe extra space. But over 2 years, or even the year we were working, they went from being maybe the worst kid in the school to coming in, checking in before they leave for Friday, or coming to us with well, my grandpa passed away, and I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this stuff. And it just sometimes those kids, like you said, they're just wired differently and they need that active thing. And sometimes you got to put a bit more work in because they're maybe guarded because every other teacher said, oh, you're not you're not good at this, you're always acting out. And you got to kind of mold them a bit. And unfortunately sometimes it's harder than others, but at the end of the day, if you can reach to them, one of them's welding now, I'm not sure what the other one is, but it's just I think we're really fortunate when we see the change. And luckily with me, I was there for 3 years with this particular student, and the growth from grade 10 to 12, like total maturity. So I like that part of the job, being able to mold and influence sometimes the harder kids that don't get along with other teachers, yet they come into our space and they flourish because that's just, like you said, with your sons, they need stuff to do and be busy. Well, our areas have all of that. So it's really cool to see.
It was, I think have we told this story on here before? But with those two gentlemen that Hoff was talking about, in my year there, we decided, I don't know what the occasion was, but Hoff and I decided to throw a pancake breakfast for the school in the auto shop.
For Christmas.
It was for Christmas. Yeah, it was like the day before Christmas or something.
Yeah.
And so we went out and we bought all this pancake mix, and we brought in had people bring in griddles, and we had the whole thing. And then as people were, we were making them, we had the kids frying them up from our classes, and then we invited the whole school. So at certain blocks, different classes would come in and get their pancakes and whatever. And so so Hoff and I are sitting there, and these two are sitting beside us in their chairs, and they're just sitting, and they're calm, and they have a smile on their face, and they're just shooting the breeze with us. And this one teacher comes by, and I think was she a math teacher in English? I don't remember. And she comes by and she goes, and she's like, how the hell did you guys?
She's flabbergasted.
She's like, how did you get them to do that? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is just how they are in here. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to answer that. And maybe I didn't know how to keep it professional either, because I didn't want to be like, maybe they like our class. I don't know. Like, but we're speaking to, it's those kids that they flourish in this type of environment, and not rows and desks or even pods or whatever. Those types of things don't necessarily mesh with every kid. And we attract a different clientele sometimes. But I've also had students come through my welding class that have, after welding, they go to calculus, right? And so all types, and that's super cool because we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to get away from that stereotype that, like I had growing up in high school. My guidance counselor goes, well, your grades aren't that great. Maybe you should think about being a mechanic. And I was like, sweet. Yeah, I was like, I guess. But now looking back, I'm like, man, I would have sucked I'm an idiot. Like, no, I'm just kidding. But but yeah, so that's kind of, it's so powerful. So leaning off, or like going on from that like relationship piece, your experience in Boom Nation, it sounds, just by how you're talking about your experience in high school and the connections that you made, is that, like, at its core, are those experiences that you've had throughout your life, what's fueling your drive to provide these types of connections to other people now?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's a couple of things. There's definitely a personal desire to do things differently, but to build on those lessons that we've learned. So experiences that I've had, experiences that others in the company have come across. We try to come together with some ideas. But look, my father was a truck driver until this past August. He retired after 41 years with the same company. So I come from a blue collar family. You don't hear anyone working for a company for 41 years anymore, much less in something, like that.
Much less 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then my grandfather, I still have both of my grandfathers to this day. One of them retired from being a welder. He worked at a shipyard as a shipbuilder, and then later building rail cars, and my other grandfather was an operator at a paper plant. So, everybody in my family's been blue collar, and that's part of the area that I live in. You talk to people from, say, Western PA, there's going to be, a lot of the same stories that come from their group. And it's just kind of a common experience. But, I was very fortunate to be able to go to school, get a degree, and go to more of a professional side of the businesses, that support those industries. Um, but I've always had a connection to the people working in the field and doing the actual jobs that these companies are providing for their clients. So with that, I spent about 4 years working with a company that was one of my customers at one time, built a good relationship with the customer there, and then went to work for them. They built scaffold, did installation for industrial and paint coating services. So I had a lot of those guys working for our team. And so you kind of went to uh, not just selling those services for a company, but actually managing people that provide that labor. And the one thing that I started to understand was there are so many good people that do this work day in and day out that a lot of them tend to go from project to project because that's kind of the nature of, the contractor lifestyle. And they don't have some of the predictability in a lot of these cases. And so what's the big thing that goes into the uncertainty of their life is how do they budget for the time that they're in today? They don't know whenever the next job is going to come along or how fast they're going to be able to hit the ground running with that job. And so I knew the challenges that we had in recruiting for people to come to our company at the time and a desire to fix that, but I never really acted on it. And so it's one of those things you just kind of file away in the back of your mind with, some other experiences in life. And then whenever I had the opportunity to speak with Brent and guys at Boom Nation, and they start telling about trying to create a better experience for the worker and do things through the lens of the worker, I thought, you know what? I think I have some experiences that I can rely on and add in my touch to see if we can come up with a better solution. And so, with that, we try to build partnerships with the companies that want to hire those individuals. And then we try to build a community of the workers to improve their experience. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to create experience for everyone. And so, here recently, Brent was able to share at a conference in Austin for the ECC some stats where there's 1.2 million people that leave construction every single year in the U.S.
Wow.
But there's a shortage right now of almost 500,000 skilled workers to fill jobs. So, what's the number one reason why people leave construction? And where do they go? The number one place that they end up going is to retail. And the number one reason why they go is because they can't afford to skip a paycheck. They have to be working somewhere. They just do not have that nest egg built up to weather some of those storms. And so with that, that just kind of brings to light that there's this whole disconnect between the companies that need people, the processes that they go through to onboard them, how effective they are at attracting new talent to come to their organization, how effective they are at retaining them once they have them on board. And then on the other side, the experience is not very good for most workers because they don't know where to look. Everyone thinks you have to know someone on the inside. It's all political. It's family members and all these things. And there's some element of truth to all of that. It's just people are a lot more likely to hire someone that they have prior knowledge of.
Of
and
course.
That's usually what it comes down to, right? So with that, there's going to be this huge influx of people needing to come into the trades, into the industry. How are they going to get there if they've never worked for anyone before? And so there's an opportunity to be an advocate for all of those people. Some of those are going to be those new students coming out from trade school. Maybe they just got a welding certification recently. Maybe they just finished HVAC class, or they just got their CDL license, something like that. But then you also have the men and women that started down a career path and they're just not happy with where they are. And they're looking for the next thing. Maybe they're that student that didn't really enjoy sitting in class, but they were told you need to go to college. You need to do this. This is going to be the way, you're too smart to be doing this. Right. And so they end up taking a path and they hate it. They can't stand being inside four walls every single day. So they need an advocate to help them know where to go to. And we're not trying to put on airs that we have it all figured out and, we're creating some big advocacy. But what we are doing is through interactions that we have with other workers and interactions we have with companies that are hiring them, we help to bridge that gap in between. So there's common language, there's common process. We can give people pointers. We help them know, okay, if you need this skill, go try this school. There's grant programs and all these things coming out for people to get started. And then there's also opportunities to say, well, now you have your certification. And I'm going to tell you, this is the real thing where workers typically struggle. Having your certification and you face a few skills of what you need to go to school, to go to work, is only half the battle.
Mhm.
The largest thing that people are tending to look for in employers is experience. And so you have to find some way to get your foot in the door. So a lot of times it's going to be taking a helper position. Sometimes that could be taking a position somewhere else within their company, doing something at a junior level. It could be working for a competitor doing something, but you just can't come out with a new certificate saying I'm ready to go and automatically believe you're going to get top tradesman pay,
Yeah.
journeyman pay. It just doesn't work that way. So with those things, it's just stuff that we learn through that time.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can help those people that are getting started to have a better understanding and set the right expectations, they'll have a better experience coming in. And then maybe we'll start to hear a changing of that story that people are more optimistic about the future of the trades than what they've been over the past few years.
Mhm.
And I think I mean, for Lance and I were quite close in age, and even when I was in high school, we got the common notion of trades are suffering, we're losing so many people, and that was 18 years ago, and we're still hearing that day in, day out. And I think, being able to have a platform like Boom Nation to be able to recruit and bring that community together can be very beneficial. And even like you mentioned, there's some people that get into the trades after already starting a career.
Yeah.
And you talked about experience. So now they're going from, say, a good paying career to I'm not happy at work, I want to start something else. They go get a certificate, they come out, they don't have experience. Well, now they might start a helper position, but now they're at the lower end of the pay scale because they have to work up, and trying to navigate all of that and not have resources can be quite frustrating. And I'm just looking through on your job section here, and piping supervisor, die set press operator, tank welder. Like, you have everything on here
Yeah.
with the pay, the location. This is gold for tradespeople or people that want to get into it, because there is a, like, how do you get into, if, again, kind of, you were saying, if you don't know anybody. When I got into the trades, one of the guys I went to school with, his dad owned a cabinet shop in BC, so that was easy to get onto and get in. But if you don't know people or don't know where to look, sometimes I think that can be a barrier for people to get in, or they get into a helper position or something they're not interested in, and they don't like it, and it steers them away from the trades because they don't know the different facets that are available.
Mhm.
Yep. And one of the things that ends up making it such a challenge there's a generation that's getting ready to retire. It's a huge percentage of the workforce. There's more people coming in that are going to be new to the industry. And the best chance for success is for us to have those two generations work together
Mhm.
for the longest period of time. So the longer that we can have for those people with great experience and maybe not quite as much energy as what they used to have, and they don't want to continue to work like they did 25 years ago, they have a chance to, work at a higher level than that, but bring in some people that are younger, they got a little bit more spring in their knees, they got, some freshness to them, but they need somebody to teach them along the way. You're not going to go from a 0-year employee to a 5-year employee overnight. And there's only certain things that you can learn from the peers that are right around you, your age. The better job we can do of mixing those groups together and having, early career, mid career, and end career people, the better off every organization is going to be.
Mhm.
And I see that as one of the big frustrations from a lot of employers. And but I tell them this because we have to have very frank discussions when we're helping them with recruiting, is you're going to have to pay for the level of experience that you're recruiting for. You're not going to get a 10-year employee at a 5-year employee pay rate.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't think that you're going to get them, and you're going to be disappointed if that is what you're advertising.
Yep.
And on the other side, we also talk to the employees about, well, you're not going to come out and get a 10-year employee pay whenever you just finished school last week. So there needs to be some realization of what compensation should be along the way. And then companies need to be willing to hire along that tier, and they need to develop their own workforce development plans. They
Mhm.
need to invest in training in these individuals. Just onboarding them is only the beginning of the process. It's not the end. And too often, I think employers look at it as, okay, you tell me that you are, say, a welder. I hired you and you're going to be a welder for me. Well, what does the next step look like for them? Are they ever going to become a foreman? Some of them may want to be or not. Is there ever a chance to move up to a superintendent or, a project manager? Maybe you put that path in front of them. It's not for everyone. You're not, if you have, a crew of 500 people, you're not going to have 500 foremen come from that, but you probably have 10 or 20, right?
Mhm.
And so you got to work on identifying that talent. But then you've got to set up programs to take people through those various stages of development. And we end up being, we kind of say that we're the Switzerland when it comes to union or non-union. We don't really care. We think there's good opportunities for both types of organizations and both types of workers. And we can recruit for both. I think there's room for unions in a lot of the trades. And I think that they have done a terrific job of developing apprenticeship programs and developing people through because they did it intentionally. And then you look at a lot of the open or merit shop type organizations, and they may have a couple of tiers of personnel within their teams, but it's usually less formal. Now that can be very good for a very ambitious team member to come in and be able to work through those ranks very quickly. But if it's not formal, just like a budget, if it's not written on paper on purpose, it's very easy to go astray from that. And then so if you're not taking those workers and progressing them along the way, you're constantly going to be churning through and recruiting more people in. You're going to have an expectation for needing 5 to 10-year employees, and you're going to have to pay 5 or 10-year employee pay to get there, where you could have those guys that are, say, 4 years, 4.5 years, but they haven't quite got to that 5-year pay yet, but they are in for the long haul with your company. So I think it has to be intentional, and people really need to be focused on the long-term picture for the employee as well as the company.
I think those important years with the older generation, newer generation, I feel that's kind of like the mentorship part where you need to have, like you said, that mix of old and younger, because some of these tradespeople that have been in for 30, 40 years, look at how much experience they have. Different, even the journeyman that I worked under at the cabinet shop, he had been doing it for 20 plus years, and the different tips and tricks on how to, how to install cabinets or to scribe a filler, all these different trades you learn by doing. And if the older generation just retire and the new ones come up, look at all that valuable information that we're losing, that people are going to have to figure out themselves, or it just is lost. And now there's, no more, or I shouldn't say no more, but the problem solving skills from that older generation, they've gone through, decades of different codes and types of work. And it's just, yeah, that mentorship stage. And I guess it depends on company to company and sector to sector. But I think that's the true learning, is to be able to have that mentorship, somebody with a large point of experience. But like you were saying, David, some of those older workers might get a bit tired and, run out of energy. So how do you incentivize or get them excited to be able to train and then hopefully retain those employees at their positions?
Yeah, I'll tell you that I think there's one thing that is vitally important and it can't be overlooked, and I think it solves a lot of things. I'm a big believer that the market works, and you're going to get what you pay for, good or bad, either way, right?
100%.
And so, if we need more people to be plumbers, and there's not enough people in the plumber, guess what? A plumber's going to be able to charge whatever they want to charge because people want their water and plumbing to work, right? if we want people that are getting further along in their age and closer to the end of their career, if we want them to stay around longer, you're going to have to pay them, right? Maybe there's a whole nother tier of mentor pay that comes into play that people hadn't even thought of before. And then if you're trying to recruit people new into the trades and you're not competing with them just for other positions in the trade. You are competing against your competitors. That is true. But you're competing with them with every other employer out there. You're competing with them for the experiences in life. And the experience is the big thing that everyone's looking for, right? So whenever you have someone come out of school and they're trying to, choose what their career path is going to be, money is part of the answer. It's not going to be the only answer. It's not the only lever that you have to use, but you have to be able to manage it properly, right? And so if you need the best skilled workers that are around, you're going to have to pay the rate for best skilled workers and not expect it to go any other way. I don't know why anyone would think that would be different, but we see it every single day, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, so you think about this, there's been this big push for everyone to go to university after school, after high school, right? So what do you have now? You have a lot more students coming out with some college education, some with degrees, some with not, because they didn't finish for whatever reason. And there's not enough jobs hiring for whatever they're doing because just like the rest of us, they didn't have it all figured out when they started, university on day one. But there ends up being a lot more supply there than it does with some of these other positions. And so now that there's more people retiring and going out, well, guess what? It may be a lot more lucrative to be someone with skilled trades than it is to be someone with certain degrees. Now, obviously, doctors are going to be at the top of the list. Lawyers are probably going to be at the top of the list. All those things. You're not going to change any of that. But comparing maybe someone that comes out with a general studies degree and, what tens of thousands or $100,000 in debt compared to a student that started working for the local refrigeration company right out of high school, has 10 years under their belt by the time they've been out of school, all those years of earning, and now they're 10 years experience in their trades. They're making top dollar. They can start their own business if they want to, right? That's not the same case for the person that came out after 4 years of school and have been trying to find, what their next step is going to be. So I think the market will have a way to adjust, but the problem is it's usually pretty painful whenever the market changes if you're not on the right side.
Yeah.
If you are on the right side of those trends, though, the reward is there for you. You just have to be prepared and look for the opportunity to match the effort.
A bit ago, you mentioned like the two different scenarios and the young people coming in wanting top dollar. Have you seen an increase in that recently, as far as young kids coming out of school or even just out of high school or out of trade school and thinking, or like, demanding top dollar because A, B, C, and D, whatever? Like, is there an air of entitlement of like the newer, I hate saying this because it makes me feel 1,000 years old, but the newer generation of young people?
Damn these kids.
Yeah. Get off my lawn. Yeah.
All right. So I will tell you that there's not one answer that's perfect for all of that. So just like so many things in life, I think that people are willing to accept different things at different stages. So those brand new people coming out, entering the workforce, they're not demanding top pay, even though they may be surprised that the pay that is typically offered to them for positions is not what was advertised from the trade school, because the trade school advertised you could come out and be making $75,000 a year or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And there should be an asterisk there that says with 5 years experience or whatever, So the potential to earn those wages is typically there for a lot of those positions. I don't think those numbers are made up. However, those are not first year salary or hourly rates that are typically utilized because they don't get the headlines of the advertisement to attract people.
Yeah.
So I think the schools can do a better job of preparing them for, this is what you look like in years 1 to 3. This is probably what you can look like from years 3 to 5. But know this, you're going to have to prove yourself starting on day 1.
Yeah.
If you go in and you bust your ass and you do a good job and you show up early, not late, you make sure you don't call in sick. You make sure that you're dependable. All these, and that you're a good team member. You're not looking at it for what the company owes you, but you're looking at it from the value that you bring to the company and the return benefit that you get from being with the organization. The relationship's going to be much better for both of you going into your employment with that company. And so I think that table could be set better for those individuals early on. But then I think the other thing that happens, just like with everyone else, is the pastures always look greener somewhere else. And so they're going to come into an organization probably so happy that someone is willing to give them that first shot at that first position. And let's just say for simple numbers, someone offers to give them $25 an hour for whatever they're doing. There could be another company down the street that needs some people, but by the time they've got 1 year experience, they could be willing to give them $26 an hour instead of 25. A short-sighted employee may take that opportunity, only realizing they're making the change for $40 a week, right? Is the headache even worth it? That could end up being a good relationship with another employer and a chance to move up. Likely it's going to be a shorter duration. Maybe it's only, not a long-term employment play, but you just have to assess those scenarios. And so everybody starts to look at it. And so they start to make the decision for themselves where they're at in life is, well, yeah, I'm worth a lot more because somebody else is willing to pay me this to come in. And they forget about the value that they saw in the relationship on day one of employment. Now, we all get to vote with our feet every day, right? You either choose whether you're going to go in and do your job and be paid for it or not. And if you end up having a company that undervalues and takes advantage of you, go ahead and walk out the door and go find someone else because there's plenty of jobs out there for everyone. But if you have a company that's investing time and energy into developing you and providing, a great opportunity for you and your family, really think about the big picture as you go through that before you make those life-changing changes. And if you're going from company to company, you're not going to have as many of those advancement opportunities from one level to the next because you haven't invested as much into the organization. So why are they going to invest as much into you? And so I say that, as I mentioned earlier, my father worked for that one employer for so long. I did not follow that path myself. I've changed jobs too many times. I'll tell you that that's been one of the things that has opened up a lot of opportunity for me, but it's also been some really hard lessons to learn. And I look back on things and I wish I would have done things a bit different. I had a great example in front of me. I had a guy show me how to do it and I still did it wrong. Right. And so it's one of those things that you don't know until you're in that seat. But I think if you sit down and kind of plan what success looks like for you as an individual, and you can think long term, I think people will end up being much more satisfied with the opportunities that they're presented with. And at the point that they're not satisfied, they just simply look for the next one, but just don't be too antsy to go from company to company thinking that that's the best way to get your pay up, because ultimately it's a risky game to be playing.
Yeah, I've heard that happen even locally with some students, and they come in and they're like, okay, I'm making this much. I know one guy left one of these really awesome companies that both Hoff and I work with, and they went down the street for like $1 or $2 more, but at the same time, they didn't think about how, this company that they left was pretty flexible as far as if they had to drop, they had to do some running around, they had to come a little late in the morning, they could just finish like 10 minutes later, that type of stuff. Also their benefits packages, if they have like in the US like a 401k, or if they, up here like RRSPs, if they match contributions to your retirement, all those things we got to consider. And or even something as simple as like paying for medical benefits and your medications. Is $1 an hour or $2 an hour going to pay for the medications that you have to have? Or you got to look, like you said, at the big picture and consider absolutely everything before you make that shift for like $1.
Yeah, one of the things that I would really recommend, talking about benefits, and it's something I wish I would have known sooner, and I advise this for everyone. If you are talking to another employer and you have the luxury of being, gainfully employed at one location and you're exploring options with someone else, make sure you ask for a copy of the benefits package. Make sure that you not only get a copy of what the coverage amounts are, but that you understand what your out of pocket cost is going to be. So even if you're just comparing premiums, and you're going to have to make some determination on your risk for things such as deductibles and all those things that go into medical plans. But I can tell you from personal experience with one of my sons, I made a career change at the very beginning of my wife's pregnancy with him. And I thought I understood the medical plan, and I did not. And it ended up costing me over $14,000 in difference just because we changed from one plan to the next. So I still love that son, but I'm going to remember that $14,000 till the day I die.
Well, and there's a lot of fine print with, benefits and different things. When you're a young go-getter, whether out of high school or, say you're early mid-20s, sometimes you're just trying to chase the dollar and you don't look at that. And I guess as you get older, you can reflect and look back, and hard advice to be able to say that when you're 20 years old, look at the big picture. You need to be able to, obviously if you have a family or, your girlfriend, you're married, you have to provide for your family. And like, Rosie was saying, $1 an hour or $2 an hour, if your medical packages are, and like you said, right, $14,000 difference. If you make a mistake because you're trying to chase that dollar, I think at the end of the day too, and my dad was a big proponent of this, is make sure you enjoy what you're doing, and everything will work out. Whether you want to work every day grumpy, it's not always about the dollar. Now, with that being said, with now more than ever, with groceries and the expense of fuel and houses and all, vehicles, it's kind of up there. But I think that big picture thinking and knowing that, like you said, you're going to have to prove yourself. And in a lot of those trades, that first year, whether you go to be an electrician or a cabinet maker, a welder, you're not doing necessarily those duties all the time. As an electrician, you might be drilling holes in studs for a full year, or you might be doing roughing, you might be snaking toilets as a plumber. You've got to work through that and look at the big picture, because that sometimes they're testing you and seeing what can this person do. Are they happy? Are they excited? Are they grumpy? Are they enjoying themselves? And then that year and a half, okay, this person is, like you said, David, coming to work every day, they're dependable. Now we're going to move up the job responsibilities and give them a bit more. Maybe now you're doing whatever trade it is, I guess that's a hard thing looking back, is the pay sometimes is a bit slower. Like in Canada, we have journeyman wages. So year 1, 2, 3, 4, you're making a percentage of the journeyman wage. So, $1 an hour a year, you look at your paycheck, you're like, oh, but you're getting that experience. And then when you're done, if you want to make that move, you've got this value that you can try to bring to another company. So that big picture thinking, now looking back, 37, it's easy to say, oh, you maybe should have done this. But for those young kids, it's really hard. And I think that education piece, like you're saying, the recruitment stuff and what you're doing, that's the beneficial stuff that the younger generation needs, so that they make the right decision for themselves and not just, dollar amount. There's so many factors into it, and it's really hard to give advice sometimes when you're trying to scrape and survive and pay for rent, and you bought a new truck because that's what you need as a welder. You got to have this big fancy, like it's just, you can spiral pretty quick.
Absolutely. And the older you get, just like your toys get more expensive, your mistakes get more expensive too.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
When Hoff and I were in university to get our ed degrees, to become teachers, one of our professors in our career and technology studies classes, they talked about how just the amount of money that this, like in our case, in this context, it's a school board or a school is looking to invest in you. So that was one of the most valuable things as far as me trying to be a go-getter and prove myself, because let's say, for instance, okay, so 52 weeks in a year. Let's say they give you 4 weeks holidays, which is a lot to start, but let's just say that. And then okay, so we'll go 48. And so let's say they're making $35 an hour, let's say. I don't know, just throwing a number out there. Times even 40 hours a week. We'll keep it light. 40 hours a week times 48 weeks. That's $67,000 a year before tax, right? And let's say they work for that company for 35 years. That's $2.3 million that company is going to want to, or is looking long term. If they keep you on, they're okay with investing that amount of money into you. So are you okay with coming to work on time? You know,
Yeah.
it's so when they said that, I was like, oh man, that's really interesting, because there's a lot of, we're lucky to have up here in Alberta, the teachers have there's 3 types of contracts. There's temporary, there's probationary, and then there's continuing contracts. So if you get a probationary contract and you pass or they like you or whatever, then they'll send you on for a continuing contract. And then that is that leap of faith on their part saying, we want to invest, you can stay with us as long as you want, right? It's like a tenure essentially, right? And so then you think about how much you're making every year, multiply it by how long your career is going to be. That's how long these people are willing to invest in you. And that's a big deal. So maybe I'm just thought about this. Maybe that's what we should be telling these young people, even in our classes. Think about that. You want to be a millionaire? I mean, obviously you're not going to have all that in the bank, but that's what if you stay there for that long, that's what you're going to end up getting from this company.
Yep. I think just a little reset in attitude sometimes can make such a big difference. And everyone probably has their pet peeve of that one phrase that you don't want someone to use. I'm sure you guys have some from your classes and everything, but I will tell you what, just it always bothered me whenever I had people working underneath me in the field in various, different roles. But if at any point you direct somebody to do something and you get the response, "That's not my job," is a quick way to see, tempers flare, in a very bad direction. And the idea behind that being, you're basically saying you don't trust me into directing our operations or whatever we need to get these tasks done. I would not ask you to do that if it didn't need to be done. And if I saw that you were working on something else, I wouldn't be directing you to do that, and so that just ends up being such a point of irritation for so many people. And I'm going to be honest, that's one of the big things that I see a problem with tradesmen. If, let's say, you're a welder and you got your certificate, you're taking care of work, now you've got a couple of years and you're Billy Badass welder, right? And someone says, okay, well, we need to clean up the shop. We need to clean up our area. It's getting bad here. If they turn around and say, well, that's not my job, I'm here to weld. No, that's the skill that we pay you for. Your job is taking care of this whole thing. And so that's where the experienced people end up having a problem with ego, because they really have this built up, persona in their mind of who they are and what they do. And they're only going to do this. They're only going to do that. Which is the same thing that they get irritated about these young people coming into the trades.
It's interesting.
When you're trying to tell them to do something and go, well, I don't want to be the helper. I want to be the one doing this. I don't want to drill those holes. I thought I was actually going to be building shit.
Yeah.
Well, you will be, but this is part of the big picture. This is what we do as a team. This is an operation. And so it's real easy to lose that perspective, and so no matter where you're at in your career, and sometimes we just have to be reminded of those things. But yeah, there's always those little cues that come up. Sometimes you have an idea that someone's mind is just not where it needs to be, or maybe they're not bought into the success of everyone the way that you are.
And I think that cleanup too, like you were saying, cleanup in general is a good, first year tradesperson, okay, you got to sweep the floor, clean the shop. That's a big testament to, are you part of a team? Are you going to work together and, keep this space clean? You've just welded, and say you're grinding pipe for 3 weeks straight. The shop's probably just littered with metal dust and all that. Now you need to clean it so you can get on to the next job. And even in the schools, You can tell the students who, they might be a little bit done early before class, they start cleaning up, not even told to. It's like those are the soft skills that I think, and like you were saying, when, employers are looking for positions, are you showing up on time? If you've got nothing to do, are you going to pick up a broom and start cleaning without being told? There's so many things. And then some kids, you call cleanup and they're like, I don't really have to do this. Well, look at there's 20 of us or 25. In 10 minutes, we can sweep this whole shop up, keep it clean so it's ready, clean, safe for the next group. I think that like the keeping your workspace, whether it's a shop, your work desk, your workshop clean, I think that speaks volumes to your character. And are you in it just for yourself? Like you said, that welder saying, "Oh, I'm not going to do it." Well, how about you pick up the broom and just, that cleanliness is a big part of being in the trades. And, if a customer comes to their $5 million house and the tile or the hardwood flooring, the installers have shit everywhere. And, well, now that homeowner comes in saying, "Hey, I'm paying you top dollar and this place is littered," I'm not going to get a good feeling. And sometimes I think tradespeople can get into a bad rap or persona of that because, oh, they're always messy. And I mean, I was taught even just at home with my parents to keep things clean, and that transferred into the trades and, cabinet installing. You drill a hole, you make a bunch of mess, you sweep it up right away, you lay, protective um, cardboard or whatever where you need, and just that little things. And then you get these customers that are watching you and you're staying clean. That almost just kind of calms them down. And okay, we have the right people in here. So I think that cleanup part can really reflect on character, whether you're in it for yourself or part of a company and a team. I think that's a big one for me, I think.
Okay, if you want to think about an opportunity to really prove yourself when you're new to a company, be that guy that takes the cleaning on yourself. Starts early, like you're saying. So if you make it a point of pride that you're going to have the cleanest shop no matter what, you're going to go in and prove that. There's going to be some other supervisor come through and they're going to come in and say, "Man, this damn place has never been this clean.
Yeah.
What changed here?" And they're going to go to someone and they're going to say, "Oh, you really got the guys going on this or that." And eventually they're going to say, "Well, no, you know what? It was this guy that was doing it because we see him doing it every day." That's how you've kind of proved that you're different, that you're in it for something more. Instead, everybody comes at it, but I really want to show you what I can do with my skills. Watch this. I'm such a good, X, Y, or Z. And they want to get, but those intangibles sometimes are the things that people overlook. And I'll tell you the other thing to go with it. So the workspace being clean is one thing. The other thing that a lot of people could take some advice in is making sure that they make themselves presentable. Don't come in with your shit all dirty from the day before. Don't come in with your shirt untucked, unkept. You look like you just threw the beer can in the back of the truck and rolled out ready for another day at work.
Yeah.
A lot of people do that. That's not what you want to put in front of your customers. And if you get called into your supervisor, that's not the persona that you would want to portray to them. So if you're that person keeping your workspace clear, you're taking pride in how you present yourself to others, people are going to notice. And being noticed for that would put you on the fast track to success much faster than being just like everyone else that just wants to do enough to get by.
In regards to Boom Nation, do you have like statistics on ages? Like, I'm curious what's the majority of like age ranges that are using the service? Like, are you seeing a lot of older people who are, well, because there's loyalty isn't a thing, so I'm assuming anymore. I'm assuming that you're going to see a lot more younger people trying to find new jobs, but that might not be a fair assumption. Are you seeing with the advent of this, like some more like older people in the last, 10 years of their careers looking for something different? Like, what's your demographics? What kind of data are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think that, and I don't have actual numbers to cite for this, but I can kind of tell you directionally by feel and engagement that we have with everyone. You're going to see a large percentage of the community being probably the 45 and younger crowd, only because they use electronic tools and media a lot more than those that are 10 years older
Yeah,
than them,
that
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
Um, And so with that, you're going to have people that come to us looking for their next job, applying for the positions, doing all those things. But with all the content that we put out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all that, you really have that crowd that's probably the 35 and younger crowd because they are living on their mobile devices. Most of these men and women probably don't have cable TV anymore. They probably don't have satellite, so they're on their phone constantly, whatever social platforms they may be engaging with, podcasts and things of that sort. And so that probably represents a larger percentage when it comes to the number of total people there. But I will tell you, um, the other thing that's interesting is we do have some of the generation that has began to use electronic, uh, let's say electronic, but social media and things like that as a way to reach out to the younger generation. And so, two gentlemen that I can mention by name are Gerald Brister and Michael Ewing, which are both members of the community. Um, I know Gerald is over 50, and I think Michael is too, but they are guys that have been in the trades for years. Uh, Whenever social media started to really kind of take off here, and I say really take off, but especially with lifestyle type things with blue collar life going into that and people finding their own experiences and building their own communities. These two guys started to build a very large audience of younger people that were coming to them for advice. And so they will put information out about Gerald's, showing some very uh, tactical skills around welding pipe and being a pipeliner and things like that, and really has the heart of a teacher and shares his experience coming from 20 or 30 years of working in the field. And then Michael Ewing's one of those guys that he's a couple years younger, but he learned a lot and looks up to Gerald Brister as a role model to him. And then he's a role model to the guys behind himself. And so he does post from his job sites all the time. And he talks about the things that he sees and bragging on jobs and sharing new products and things that are coming through, but kind of building his own following from that. So I think it's really interesting the way that um, through social networking, people are able to build their own community and really have an enriched experience so much more than they could before. Because hell, let's go back 20 years. If you're back, 2003 or so, whenever I was coming out of school, 2004, um, the only experience opportunity that you really had to work with people that had those additional years of experience was either at the job site with them or by being related to them somehow. But there was going to be very little interaction with that. Well, now you have open access to anyone else that wants to share. And so it's really, I think, encouraging to see that opportunity develop and those different generations being able to interact with one another in a thing that brings value to both of them.
Yeah, that's a great point because I mean, even looking back when we were growing up in the trades and stuff in school, to find somebody if you didn't know how to do something, if you didn't know anybody, you get onto the phone, potentially call somebody. Well, now you can go on YouTube, you can follow somebody on Instagram. We've had a lot of guests on the show that um, from all walks of life, all different trades that are putting content up for people to, hey, you want to try welding or cabinet installation, tile setting, you can now watch a 5-minute video. And I can attest to this. I finished my basement during COVID. Our kids were at a daycare, so we had, a little bit of chunk of money to be able to finish the basement. And I watched painting videos for probably a week and a half. I went out and bought the painter that I needed, had everything ready, thinking, talking to myself, I know how to do all this. I've watched, 15 hours of videos. And then I get in here, I got like, well, sometimes you can get whirlwinded, but you can go watch stuff now where you need assistance, whether it's automotive, you can go on YouTube, watch how to disassemble a rear end or install shocks. Whereas before, you kind of need those technical manuals or you need to know somebody. So I think, the different generations, I would like to chat with some of that older generation and see how they feel because this is totally unknown, like you were saying, that 45 and under using technology,
Mhm.
that older generation of maybe, 60. I mean, my uncle's 60 or my uncle's 70. He welded for, I think, over 40 years. He is not very technologically inclined, so just to see, it is just amazing how that technology, I think it's got pros and cons, but for the access, like you were saying, that's really cool, and being able to access stuff. But can it also maybe, and in my sense with the painting, does it give you a false sense of hope of, oh, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to rip my vehicle apart and rebuild my brake system, and you
Yeah.
drop it down and the brakes still work, and you're like, oh, I just followed this guy on YouTube,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
then
I
you
think
and then
you
you
have to
pay
take things with a
triple.
grain of salt.
Then you pay triple because they have to fix your screw ups.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus a tow truck to get it to the shop.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That too. You
Oh,
don't have
it's
triple A. Yeah.
it's pretty cool to see. So David, as we kind of wrap up, we typically have 3 questions. And I think we're going to rework these a little bit around maybe the employment, that job search section. So for somebody that is looking to get into a job, what's some advice you have for them getting into, say, the skilled trades, and they don't know where to start? What's some advice that you have to give them?
Yeah. So I think that uh, the most important first step is to start with a wide search. Don't be too hyper focused on one position or one company. If that's what is guiding you in a direction, keep that in mind and allow it to guide you, but don't be locked down because there's so many factors that can determine whether they choose to hire you, whether they're choosing to hire anyone, whether they need someone with your skill set, your experience, all of those things. However, if you start your search widely, as in even the industry that you want to work in, and then you start to look at what your job skills currently are, what the job skills that are needed with positions that you're able to do a little bit of research and find, and then where your areas of interest are, and then start to kind of navigate, through that search to just try to kind of find where you're going to fit most easily. And not that a job is going to be easy, but if you're someone that does not like working in the elements, you're probably not going to want an outdoor job, right? I mean, so maybe you're going to be in a fab shop or manufacturing facility or some type of factory. Great. There's opportunities for that. But I think too often we talked about those flyers that come from trade schools, right? You see something comes across and it says, earn $100,000 a year as this. Everybody knows they like the money. They don't know if they like the skills of what it takes into getting it, right?
Yeah.
And so an example of that would be you could want to be a plumber because plumbers make good money. Man, running water pipe and hooking up faucets are great. Guess what? You also got to clean up shit. You also got to plunge toilets,
Yeah.
snake drains, do all of those things, right? So if you have a weak stomach, you probably don't want to go into plumbing. If smells bother you, it might not be for you. So
Yeah.
just kind of figure those things out. Maybe you're one of those individuals that, like we talked about, is very good academically, can figure things out, especially with mathematics. But you like to work with your hands. Maybe electrician field is good for you because maybe you need to be able to determine loads and drops and all those things that those guys go into. And I definitely don't know the specifics of it, but I know you have to be pretty sharp to work with the things that those guys deal with every day. And so that's my advice. And then the other thing I would say, find those things that you're interested in, and then try to find someone that's involved with that particular type of job in that trade, in that industry, in that business, and offer to buy them a cup of coffee, offer to buy them a beer, something, but just ask them for a few minutes of their time and see if they can give you some advice into how they got started and where they ended up. And if you let them know that you want to take a path similar to them, you may have just found an advocate for you in the industry that can help put a word in for you whenever you're ready to go to work, whenever, you know, they know of something that's open, you're going to be at top of mind for them to give you a reference. The number one way that people are still onboarded and companies recruit is through internal referrals. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And I believe that's just due to the fact that people want to have some sense of knowledge of the people coming into the possible employment relationship. But the more connections you can build with people in the industry, the more likely you are to be successful in your search.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. What about some like technical skill sets for somebody who's wanting to search for a job? You kind of talked about relationship building and networking and stuff. Do you have any other advice for like skill sets that you think would be important for
Yep.
somebody who's trying to, determine, or once they already have determined their skilled trade they want to pursue that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that I think that I want to take kind of a different approach to it because my son, that is 13, recently went to a STEM event at the local university. And so all the kids there were participating in this event put on by the College of Engineering. And the thing that we talked about there was uh, still relevant for what we were talking about earlier with blue collar workers. The intangibles and the soft skills are so much more important than anyone appreciates whenever you're starting off. You're learning those skills all through life. You develop them more completely as you get to the age to enter the workforce. But you've learned your manners whenever you were young. Your parents taught you how to behave in public and how to treat others with respect. Those lessons are going to serve you well whenever you go into your employment opportunities. And so I think that those other skills that you learn, whether it comes to vocational skills, practical skills, uh, college education, all of those things are very important. But I would let those skills take care of themselves. Put the classroom time in, put the laboratory time in, spend time honing your skills and improving as much as you can. But do not think that that is what people are going to be wowed by. That is the requirement of doing the job. Ultimately, you're going to have to sell yourself in an interview. And nothing goes further in an interview than a good handshake, looking someone in the eye, and treating them with respect. Then, after you've had an opportunity to make a great first impression, you go through a good interview. Some positions, the interview is going to be, you're going to show up, you're going to be here, you're hired. Here we go, right? Another interview could be a lengthy process where you're in for a 30-minute or a 1-hour conversation. Either way, but just be prepared to be yourself and present yourself well. And if you do that, you are so much more likely to be chosen for a position because people want to be around you. If you are a crabby, dusty, irresponsible, unprofessional person, guess what? There's a lot of you out there. You're not bringing anything different to the table, and it makes it so much easier for employers to pass up on you. So everybody thinks that those things don't really matter, and they want to kind of push it down the ladder of things that are important. I will tell you that first impression is probably the most important factor once you've secured an interview before anything else.
Yeah, it's like, that hand, even like you said, the hand, something as simple as a handshake. I learned that really young. My dad was like, "Okay, don't shake my hand with like a limp, like I have guys, I have people that I know. I just saw a few of them over the weekend, and at an event, and I go shake their hand, and it's like I'm holding one of my kids' stuffed animals. It's just like sitting there flopping. I'm like, oh, hey, like it's just something about it personally. Like my dad was always, and my dad wasn't this like hard, like, whatever, like trades dad or whatever, but it just those types of skills he instilled in me, and look someone in the eye when you're talking to him, and those types of things. And it reminds me of that movie, The Internship, that Google movie with remember with was it Vince Vaughn, and they were talking about who they should hire in this internship, the people at Google, and it's like, what was it? Who would you want to be stuck on a layover with, or on seated next to on an airplane with? Like that's the person you're going to spend the next 10 years of your life seeing more than your family. Am I going to want to talk to this guy, or am I going to want to talk to this guy? And that's be the one that they want to talk to.
Well, man, and I'll tell you that, we talked a little bit about the difference in generation and ages. With me having kids, I've just noticed that one of the things that the younger generation is really struggling with right now is a lot of them struggle with that first impression. They
Mhm.
struggle with making eye contact. They've come up at a different time. They didn't have as many personal interactions. I still think there's some lingering effects of 2020 and all those things around. And I had the conversation with my son. Look, this is way. You don't have to break anyone's hand. It's just firm enough to say hello, let them know you respect their time, and look someone in the eye. And he goes, well, I don't like to do that. I know you don't like to do that. That's why you have to do it, right? But there's so many people out there that they may not have those family members giving them those same lessons. And sadly, they're going to be behind whenever it comes to making those impressions. And so, having teachers such as yourself and the interactions that you can have with your students, so often, that's one of the things that I would hope that more teachers spend time with their students, with, even if it's just one discussion during the semester, at least mentioning it to the students so that they're prepared for the world whenever they start to enter the workplace.
Looking at somebody, the handshake is obviously quite important, very important,
Yeah.
but got a great story with the, being able to talk and look at somebody. My shop teacher, I was very, he was a role model when I was in high school. He roasted pigs and prime rib and beef for our wedding and on his homemade spit. And we're very close. And he had two kids. And when they were growing up, they were at the lake and they really worked with them on how to speak and what to do when you're around adults. And they took them to a lot of functions. And they moved across the street from my wife's parents in BC at one point, and they would come over and they could talk to any adult. I think they were 5 and 7, and they could look at you in the eye and carry a conversation. And now looking back, as my kids are getting to that age, like that is so wonderful to, and they put a lot of work into this. It wasn't just a, hey, this is what you do. They went through and this is how we can talk, and they did mock-ups and different things. And these boys are just, and now they're one's graduated, one's in grade 11 this year, and they can, whether they know what they're talking about or not, they are present, they're looking at you, like it's just, and I think like you said, I think there's some deficits from 2020 and everybody being locked up and this, and that younger generation or the kids in elementary school, face into a laptop or a computer and not having that interaction. I think we're going to see that for quite a while, but yeah, like now that you're saying that might be something to go over with my classes, like how to present and look
Yep.
somebody in the eye, and just those soft skills that fortunately some people have that amongst their families, but there's a lot of people that might not have that guidance or tips. And how can you get them educated so that, because you get one shot, you blow a 5 or 10 minute interview, your skills might be through the roof, but if you can't present well, that interviewing skills, I think, is a big area for potentially, maybe we need to do a better job in schools too, because ultimately you're going from first impression, and there's a lot of students, whether we teach them or not, or and I've even butchered a couple interviews. And how do you get them to that point where they're confident and not, you're nervous already because you're going for an interview, but how do you kind of reset, calm down, and just be authentic, I guess, is what the big thing is, right?
Absolutely. And let me ask this question. And I didn't even think about it before, but uh, we spend a lot of time in classrooms working on a lot of different skills, trying to create well-rounded individuals. Who's giving interview classes? Who's giving interview sessions? Is that your guidance counselors are typically helping you line up for your next stage of education and some choices along that way? Who does that fall on, right? And so I'll just ask this question to both of you. Have either one of you ever received employment for a position that you did not interview for?
Yeah, the cabinet shop. But again,
Ah,
there's a tie to,
Yeah.
not growing up, but knowing somebody. And
yep.
yeah, one,
Yep.
but then there's also a few, the car dealership, a golf course. You need to have the interview.
So if
I
you start thinking about, for the majority of workers, they're
yeah.
probably going to have multiple stops along their path of employment. And if they want to set up for the greatest chance for success, they need to learn how to ace the interview, right?
Yeah.
You don't, you don't pick up a bat and know how to hit the ball, naturally. You're going to have to work on those skills. And so I think that that's one thing that could, help a lot of people present themselves better would be just a little bit of development and practice, but definitely something I want to work on with my kids to help, set them up for better success.
We have
Even
a
like your public speaking, like you said too, right? You took that in high school.
Yep.
For me, I'm not even, me in group projects or even in university presentations, I'm like, ugh, which
but you'll talk to a group of 30 kids, no
Oh, yeah.
problem.
But you put me in front of 10 or 12 adults and I go hold the balloon, right? So yeah, I mean, I think we now talking about this, I think we need to do a better job of preparing, the younger generation, even in, elementary, middle school, helping out your own children if you have them to, be confident, and like interviewing skills are a whole new thing, because there might be a generation that has never had an interview. You show up, hey, can you work tomorrow? Yeah, okay, you're hired, and
Yeah, you
there you
use
go.
oxygen, you're here. Let's go. Our school, well, in Alberta, the Alberta education system has a course called Career and Life Management, and part of that, it's not, this part isn't standardized. There are standardized outcomes, but every teacher or every school can kind of make it their own, right? And as long as they hit these outcomes, our school, which is actually is pretty cool. When I was teaching it, I teach in a Catholic high school, and it was part of it was coupled with the religion course. Now it's coupled with physical education, but they really do a resume, they do a cover letter, and they do a mock interview. So they have a couple, like the guidance counselor is a part of it. I think one of the principals is a part of it, and just a couple teachers that have maybe their prep that day or whatever. And they go around to these people and they do a mock interview with them, and then the interviewer gives them feedback, and that's their mark for that. So it actually works out pretty good. They end up having like 5 mock interviews. But yeah, every little bit helps, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So David, typically our last question for our guests is, your top 3 starting out tools, and this is typically, dealing with tradespeople and builders and makers and stuff. And so this is a little bit different, but I guess maybe tie it to skilled trades. I guess what would your top 3 starting out traits of a potential employee be? You're coming into that interview. That's actually, now we're talking about interviews. Let's just wing it with that. What would be your top 3
Interview
skills or
skills.
things that you need to do to be able to ace that interview to get your job that you want to get?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that the very first thing that I would mention would be, I don't want this term to be overused, and we use it for a lot of different things, but I would want someone to be authentic and real. And what I mean by that is that's alluding to trustworthiness, right? So I want to know that they are portraying themselves to me in an accurate manner. I want to know that they understand who they are pretty well, and they can kind of share their story of what they bring to the table, how they would be a value to the organization. And they're not trying to be anything else, because if I'm interviewing them for a position, that's what I'm wanting to hire them for. And I'm trying to determine whether or not they are a fit for that role. So they shouldn't try to be, anything else. And so, if you're hiring a shop hand, you're not expecting to be picking up an accountant. So don't think that you need to come in with anything. So just, real and authentic. The other thing that I would look for next is I'm looking for some way to determine if they're going to be dependable. And so that dependable is going to look a different way at different times. The number one way is, do I believe that you're going to show up every day on time? Do I believe that you're going to show up ready to work, and you have the company's best interest, your best interest, and the team's best interest whenever you're here? And so if I know who you are, if I know that I can depend on you, you've already got the largest part of the battle won. And then the next step that we're going to go to, kind of depending on the position, is going to be for the skill set of whatever the role may be. If it's for a salesperson, I'm going to want to understand if you're able to understand the needs of a client and be able to share possible solutions for whatever their challenges may be, as opposed to just trying to convince them to buy something whether they need it or not. Typically that's not going to be a long-term success for someone in sales. If you're hiring for someone in skilled trades, and let's just say it's going to be a diesel mechanic, I'm going to have some practical skill assessment to put you through to see if you really know how to work on diesel engines. Right. And so I think that is a vital part of making sure that you match the skill for the position. And that's going to be a requirement of that job. But I'm not going to waste my time on the skill assessment if you don't pass the first two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The first two is where you earn the opportunity to prove that you have the skills. And then we make the decision from there.
I love that.
That's excellent.
That's cool. David, this has been a really fun conversation, and like I feel like we just cracked the surface of employment, employability, dependability, all these big things that you have to keep in mind when you're applying for employment or when you're looking for an employee. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time today to come on the show and talk about Boom Nation, but like bigger picture, just talk about, like what the workforce is right now, where it's headed, how people can enter, like all these different. I feel like this podcast, this show will provide a lot of really good advice and a lot of like practical things people can take away, whether they're looking for their first job or a complete career change. I feel like it's going to communicate, it'll be able to communicated to a whole bunch of different areas. So thank you so much for sharing your interest, your passion, and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with our audience today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come on and visit with you guys. It's a real pleasure to make new connections and new friends. And, I loved being able to talk about these type of things. I think it's really what makes a difference. And, I just love being able to share the story from what we can build in our own life experiences, what we work with every day, and then hopefully help others find success.
And if the door's open, if you ever want to come on again, absolutely. Just say the word. Let us know when you want to come on, and we'll make time for you for sure. As we wrap up, where can people find you? Do you have anything you want to promote specifically? Now's the time. Yeah,
thank you for that. So let's start with, if you are looking for your next job, if you're looking for something specifically in the trades, visit the job board that we have at boomnation.com. Go to the job section and just do a search. You can look around. There's hundreds of positions that are posted there. They are all specifically tailored to the skilled trades. That's what we're hyper focused on. If you are looking for an opportunity to post your jobs as an employer, contact us. Real easy to set up your account. The lowest level of entry to post a job would be the job board only experience. It's literally $100 a month to post unlimited jobs and reach unlimited candidates. But we also do social recruiting, which is where we can do promoted ads across multiple platforms to all of our following to reach more skilled people and take a proactive approach to recruiting, as opposed to waiting for people to come in to the job board website. And then if you're looking for entertaining stuff, check out our pages on Facebook and Instagram. Look for Boom Nation USA. Look for The Trench, which is our newsletter, or Long Live the Trades, which is our podcast directed specifically at the trades. And I think you will find a lot of entertaining and fun material there. Memes, reels, things of that sort, but really kind of a reflection of the humor that comes from job sites. And then, if you enjoy podcasts, Boom Nation Presents is one of our series that we have out, and the other is Long Live the Trades. So just kind of depending on where your area of interest may be, check us out.
And I'll link all of those. Everything you mentioned will be linked in the show notes of this episode as well. Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. And you've given me a lot to think about and I'm assuming Hoff too, of what we need to start talking about a little more with our classes. Just like you said, the soft skills, the intangibles that are going to separate them from the pile of resumes on a guy's desk, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate your time. It's been a slice. Hoff, thank you for coming. And Hoff's at his house. I have sick kids at my house, so we decided not to have it here. So Hoff's zooming in. So thank you, Hoff.
Thanks, Rosie.
And thanks to everyone for listening. And we will catch you in the next one.